And we are live. Welcome to PacWest Bigfoot, guys. This is Dave, and I've got Bill on here. And let's check real quick. You there, Bill?
I'm here.
Awesome, awesome. Real quick, just to kind of give you guys some updates, I want to say I should give a shout out to Scott here in June, who is the winner of the coffee mug and T-shirt. And this next month, guys, you can see on the camera right here, got this really awesome A Young Researcher's Guide to Bigfoot by Gail Beatty and Deborah Ray. And you guys can hook up with them through my Facebook page as well. So I'm going to be giving that away in July. Plus, I'm going to give away an awesome little PacWest Bigfoot shirt next month as well. So we're going to have two giveaways next month. One to kind of celebrate a little bit about the swag and the shop opening and everything up over there and everything. So it's going to be fun. So anyways, we're not here for that. We're here for the killer interviews. So Bill is, he has had quite the experience. And it was, I guess, twice in one night, huh?
Correct.
All right. So what I'm going to do, Bill, is I'm just going to let you take over from here. I might kind of interject here and there with some questions or whatever. And but other than that, tell us what you were doing that led up to it and what you experienced.
Well, this was in the late 80s, 88, 89. And a friend of mine, Mark, and I went on a 2-week backpacking trip in Northern California. The first week was in the Trinity Alps, and we started out of Weaverville. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of the trip was in the Marble Mountains. And so we started, the first night was at a place called Upper Rush Creek Lake, mm-hmm. which was absolutely beautiful and very dense forest. If you've never backpacked up there, huge trees and, just lots of concealment for the wildlife. So we made it to Upper Rush Creek Lake and had a great night. And then there were some other lakes we went to along the way in the area. One of them was Man-Eaten Lake. And interestingly enough, at that lake we had some unusual encounters. My friend Mark was fishing and he caught a couple of fish. And a huge crawdad tried to steal them. I'd never seen that before. And then the next morning, we're packed up and ready to go. On the other side of the lake, there was a bear thrashing through the brush. I mean, just, mowing it down like a mower would mow the lawn. And so we kind of looked at that and went, well, that's wildlife. That's what they do. So we went along with our journey. And we ultimately spent a night at Boulder Lake, which feeds Boulder Creek. And again, another nice evening. And after that, we went to Lillypad Lake. And it's not as much a lake as it is a pond. And I would say the local pack outfitters use it to water their mules and their horses.
Yeah.
And so near the one end of the pond is a V-shaped grove of trees. And we put our tent in the narrow part of that V. And if you were a bird looking down at that V, on the left-hand side of the trees is a swampy, deep, wet meadow, and then more like a bog. And then there's a stream that goes through it. And so it was really hot on our trip. So I jumped in the stream and cooled off. And then as I walked through the meadow, you know how you pull your feet out and you get that suction noise?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, remember that. So we went back to the tent, and the sun set. And then the cloud cover came down to a couple 100 feet above the camp. And then all of a sudden, we had a fire going too. And we're talking, it's like 10 o'clock at night. And the deer were out. And David, it was like ballet. They were sprinting through the air, flying around. It was absolutely beautiful. And so about 11 o'clock, we both retired for the evening. And then Mark went in first. And at that time, I had a 4-season tent. And so this was interesting. As I was closing the rain fly, something with a hoof pushed on the rain fly. And I was watching it going, what is this? And then it immediately pulled the hoof back. So I didn't think anything of it. I closed the inner canopy and then hit the sack. Well, I only had one sleeping bag at that time. It was a winter bag. And so I was very hot, and it was late in the evening. I mean, it's like 2, 3 a.m. And so I was hot. And so I was sitting up, and Mark, my friend, was sound asleep. And all of a sudden, where the meadow was, I heard something coming toward the tent on 2 feet. It wasn't a bear, because bears chomp their muzzle.
Yeah.
It wasn't range cattle. It certainly wasn't deer. And David, I'm telling you, this thing was on the other side of the trees, about 25 feet away from my tent. And it walked through that bog like you and I would walk down the sidewalk. And, I was listening intently, and it would put its foot down, and it was a resounding thud. The thing had to weigh upwards of 800 pounds, maybe more.
Jeez.
And then the amount of time in between each footstep indicated something with a long gait, a tall animal, and it walked parallel to where the trees are by the tent. There were probably 8 to 10 steps, and it was like boom, 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 very heavy hit to the ground. And other than that, it was just silence. I didn't hear any heavy breathing. There was no screams, thank goodness. And all of a sudden, there was silence. And believe me, when I tell you, I was listening intently. And then I thought, okay, it's gone. Whatever it was, it's gone. And so I laid back down, got up a short while later, and all of a sudden, I heard this thing coming toward my tent. I heard boom, boom. And in my mind, I'm screaming, hey, we're passing through. We're here in peace. Please leave us alone. And then it stopped. And I'm listening. It was probably listening and smelling us. And then I went back to sleep. And I got up in the morning, ran out of the tent. And by the way, my friend Mark slept through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up in the morning. I know. And I didn't find any prints whatsoever.
Yeah, I think I would have slugged him in the arm. Dude, wake up.
Well, I felt like it. But didn't find any prints, no smell, didn't leave a calling card. I've had the good fortune to do mountaineering in Alaska. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I live here on the eastern slope of the Sierra. So I've dealt with a lot of black bear and deer and things like that. And I'm telling you, it wasn't any of those. In my humble opinion, this thing was an alpha male that was walking through its territory, letting us know that it knew we were there. And, it was very benevolent. I mean, I've read enough and listened to enough of the stories on PacWest Bigfoot to know that, they can be very aggressive too. And we lucked out.
That's one of the reasons that I actually, most of the experiences that I get and create those stories, the backstories around, most of the experiences are usually somewhat aggressive. Not usually, some of them are pretty really aggressive, but some of them are just aggressive in the stance of like, hey, get out of here or I'm going to eat you or kill you or I'm going to knock you against a tree or something. I don't want you here.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I kind of the sense that I get. It's just territorial.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think this guy probably had fed, so he wasn't hungry, thank goodness. And I got to tell you though, I mean, as I told you before, I trail run, and you, in my opinion, particularly in the evening, could not outrun this thing on the trail. I mean, if it was just walking by our tent as quickly as it did through that murky, swampy meadow, and you did not hear the suction when it pulled its feet out. It was just boom, boom, boom. There's no way you can outrun it, particularly if you had a pack on. There's no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds a lot like the one.
On my experience.
Go ahead.
Oh no, on my end it says the internet connection's unstable. So go ahead.
Oh,
Can you
I
hear?
was just saying that, like when I heard that behind our tent that night and how it was just thud, thud, and then splash, thud. I mean, it was a 12-foot wide creek at least. It only
Mhm.
splashed once.
Yeah, think about
And
that.
you could feel the, like when you put your hand on one side of the table and you tap the other, you could feel that heavy vibration,
Right,
in the ground. Did you
right.
feel any vibrations in the ground, or was it just
No, I
that?
didn't feel anything because I think the swampiness of the
Oh yeah,
meadow
that's right.
absorbed it.
Okay.
Frankly, I wish we had it because then it might have woken up my friend, who to this day always says, "Bill, you're never going to let this go, are you?"
Yeah, really.
When something like this happens, it changes you. As much as good a time as we had up there in the Trinities and the Marbles, there's no way I'd go back by myself. Because here in the Eastern Sierra, I'll get my bivy sack and my dog, and we'll go out. We'll spend a night or two. It's fun.
Mhm.
We don't have any of this nonsense to worry about that I know of.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm telling you, Dave, as you well know, I mean, people. I tell my friends, I told my family who are
Mhm.
back east, and they kind of look at me and they think, okay, well, and darn well they don't believe you, but Bigfoot exists. I mean, it's a huge, powerful, and
Yeah,
swift animal. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, don't kid yourself.
Swift. That's a great adjective for this thing. Is swift. I guess that's maybe something that. Yeah, that's a great adjective for this thing. Swift.
Well, it's accurate. I mean, just based on what the little time I spent with Bigfoot, which is more than enough for my lifetime, that describes him perfectly. I mean, the wilderness is his and her home, and they
Yeah.
move through it effortlessly. And again, I'm just glad that this male who came through, was benevolent and kind and saw fit to let us go and enjoy our trip.
Yeah, personally, I'm not the kind of guy that thinks that we're, on their menu for, like purposely on a menu. I think that maybe sometimes you run across a rogue one. Maybe it's like some animals. Most animals will stay away from you unless they're really, really hungry. Really, they're so stretched out and so thin that it's just like they'll eat anything at the moment.
Yeah, no, I
And
agree.
so I think that's just kind of my take. Like it probably figured out by the time it got that close. It's like, hey, there's people there. You know, I'm just gonna, and then if it came back later, it was probably just checking you out to see if you were still there or whatever.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know,
there's a lot of curiosity, not only with Bigfoot, but
yeah,
with wildlife in general.
yeah,
But I'll tell you too, as I said before, I have dealt with bear here in the Sierra, but also I had the good fortune to do a summit and traverse of Mount McKinley. And on the
yeah,
way out, we dealt with grizzly bear.
yeah.
And you know what's worse than dealing with a sow and cubs? Are the young, not so young, but the ones that are about 6, 7 years old, the males,
Hmm.
because they hang out together and they're bullies. And
Yeah,
so I think the same thing applies to Bigfoot. I mean, there are family pods out there of Bigfoot, and when those males get together, it could be a problem.
I think so too. I think also it might be the. I was talking about this earlier in the live stream on YouTube about how maybe possibly the family group, as the young males get older, they get pushed out. It's like time to go do your thing,
Yeah,
start your thing, whatever. And they get pushed out. And that's where you end up with, for a while or for a certain season or two or three, you end up with what we call rogue, the rogue kind of Bigfoot, male Bigfoots, which are, that kind of not quite teenagers, but not old enough to drink yet.
yep, yep,
So they're kind of finding their way out there, and some of them sometimes can be stretched a little thin as far as food is concerned, or maybe they haven't really had any sort of encounters of us before. You know, maybe they've never seen a human being, you know. They might have seen that shiny, bright object flying in the sky above in the blue, but they have no idea that there's somebody in it, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. And
So, that's just that's always been kind of my opinion. It's just, it kind of depends on the animal at the time. You know, like you said, the bears can be a little bit bullies. Maybe these can be bullies too, or they could be acting out of self-defense, and they act first before they think anything through. It's just pure instinct.
exactly. And it's all about their perception, right?
Hmm.
You know, they're probably initially as scared of us as we are of them.
Yes.
You know, and then you
Yeah.
got that fight or flight, and when that kicks in, hopefully they're going to run.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you always hear of them standing their ground, charging, bluff charges, things like that. But, we might have a lot of encounters out here over time, but, during a given year, how many real reports come in? 100, maybe, if we're lucky, during a given year.
Yeah.
So there's really not a lot of reports for as many people hang out in the woods,
And how many of
camping in
the
the summers and everything
yeah,
else.
yeah. I mean,
So, fight or flight, I think that they usually prefer swift flight.
yes. Yeah, well, they're smart. You know,
Mhm.
just they
Yeah.
see something they don't know, and they go, "Okay, I'm out of here."
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
yeah. But
So, yeah.
but for anyone who doubts the existence of Bigfoot, its ability to move around the woods or the forest quickly, even I would say up slopes, not necessarily cliffs, but steep slopes. Um, these guys are very nimble and agile. And
Yes.
again,
Swift, nimble, and agile.
yeah, for a big creature, and it would be a nightmare if you had to, run into a couple of those, young adults that have had nothing to do that day except chase you.
Yeah, I mean, we've always noticed how sometimes maybe chimps don't take to trees when they take off. Sometimes they take to ground, but they're moving with the trees and with the bushes, and it's the way. It's like you see those guys doing that parkour or whatever you call it,
Oh yeah, in the
jumping
buildings.
over rails and buildings
Hmm.
and stuff.
Hmm.
It's like that, except for it's even more natural. I mean, that took time to learn to do things and react quick. These they don't have to do that. This is pure instinct for them. It's just natural behavior.
Yeah, they don't think; they just live and they
Yeah.
act. And they move
So,
around.
yeah. And so, I think that, gosh, you guys have been up there that long. Maybe it was around before that. Maybe it just came in at night.
Well, yeah, it probably
Just to
did.
because it knew it, like it could be, not seen as well. And
Well,
maybe it just wanted to check out and see how threatening you guys might be in its territory.
as far as I was concerned, this guy was the landlord,
Hmm.
and he was checking on the tenants, in his area, and
Yeah.
we were quiet, and I
And
think
that was
there's
the Lillypad Lake, right? It's kind of sitting in that little valley meadow like looking like thing, trees around it.
yes. Well, actually, that's a good question. I went to Google Earth recently and looked at it, and it looks far different than when I was up there in the late '80s. There weren't as many trees, but it was very muddy and murky and all that stuff. And so,
Mm.
like you said, it was. I mean, Bigfoot needs camouflage. It needs concealment. It needs the element of surprise. It needs
Yeah.
that darkness so it feels comfortable. It can go about its business day to day. And then when the nighttime comes, that's when I would think that it is more active, and then it
Yeah.
goes back to its cave or wherever it lives, and rests until the next day.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that today too, kind of like the bedding. Where does a Bigfoot crash?
Yeah.
And some people think it crashes into trees. I'm not sure if I buy that part. Something that's that big crashing in a tree. I
No.
don't know. I don't know if the limbs can handle that. But bedding on the
I
ground or taking shelter into like rock formations, and even making more formations out of by pushing more and more rock over something, creating like a little cave-like structure. I think that's what they do for the most part, and taking advantage of things that are old rundown cabins in the middle of nowhere.
I agree with you.
You know.
Yeah. Why build something where you can go in an old cabin?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're smart.
Creatures of opportunity.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Opportunistic.
Yep. They're
So.
creatures of habit, creatures of opportunity, and so yeah. So no, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this. Yeah, I had kind of like the same incident as you, where it was just you could hear it, and what I heard first was the sniff, the
Hmm.
right behind the tent, dude,
Yeah.
right behind it, and then all of a sudden it was just the little 2-year-old. She just screamed to high heaven in the middle of the tent. We woke up, and all you hear is thud, thud, splash, thud, and then it kept thudding and crashing up through the hillside on the other side.
Oh my God.
And then as soon as I got out of the tent and had the flashlight and the handgun, the revolver, it was an old Western revolver thing. It was a really cool gun, old Colt. And
45.
it just stopped. The sound stopped. It's like it went and hunkered down on the side of a mountain
Wow.
in the dark. And you could hear, it was just weird. You could just hear the thud. It was crazy.
You know what?
So
You know what I heard too, and what I didn't hear was when this thing came around. You know, you hear the crickets, you hear the
yeah,
sounds of the forest.
yep,
But I'll tell you, when Bigfoot walks through, everything is quiet.
yeah.
You know, and I tell people, be aware of the sounds of the forest, what you hear and what you don't hear.
Oh yeah, my we used to live out in Rogue River, Oregon, and we would lived on like 2 acres, and 2 acres doesn't sound too big until you're out in the middle of the woods on 2 acres because that includes all the other woods. Um, but we had like you can go up the hillside from the house, and then there was this little trail through the woods to a little open area with a fire pit my dad made that was encircled by woods.
Nice.
And we had neighbors to the right of us about, I don't know, 100 yards, and then neighbors to the left 100 yards, and about neighbors across the highway from us. But that was it. But in back of us, there was no neighbors until you got to the next county.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was just mountains and woods. And I think the only thing that was on the other side of those woods in between the mountains there was an old airstrip that they used to use a long time ago, like in the 40s and 50s, and they stopped using it. But I'll tell you what, man. I've heard some pretty crazy noises out that way before. I never thought it was Bigfoot or anything like that, but you never know.
You don't. You
You
don't.
don't.
So I have a question for you. Would you have gotten out of the tent if you didn't have that gun?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Because
I
people
would
ask
have
me
waited
that.
till the sound stopped, and then I knew it was across the creek up the head up, and it was that hillside or hill or mountain was pretty tall, so and it was steep, and it was nothing but broad. You couldn't walk up it if you were a person. It was just too much. But that thing, I'm telling you, that thing must have got 75, 100 yards away from us in seconds flat. I mean, it was just that fast.
Now think about that, going uphill through the
Uphill
underbrush.
in the middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah. Now think about that. If you had to try and run from something like that, I mean, forget it. You know,
It's
you
crazy.
try.
So we all got out and got into the truck and just slept in there the rest of the night. Well, they did. I kind of stayed awake for a while,
Yeah,
you know. But it was like yours. It was just that you just know from the sound that you're dealing with something that you don't. It's just not. It's something else.
yeah. It's nothing that, particularly the first time, you think, okay, you go through the logical order of what could be
Yeah.
out there, and then when you've gone through that and none of it resonates, you think, uh-oh.
You're like, what was that? Then it comes back a second time to you.
Yeah, you think, oh my God.
And
And
you're
it's
like,
looking
okay,
right
am
at
I?
us. Yeah,
If I'm about to be predation.
yeah, yeah. Is he going to
Yeah,
drag my tent with both of us in it? I
yeah.
mean, oh my
So
gosh.
I mean, I've heard all kinds of things. Oh, he peed on my tent. Oh, he's gonna eat me. Oh, they dragged my tent off. I have one encounter in here somewhere, and it probably won't be out till like I don't know for a while, but it was another tent dragging, and I was like, oh man, that's freaky though. Yeah, that's a little freaky. I couldn't imagine a tent being dragged, and you know, you knew it wasn't. I think I remember saying you knew it wasn't a bear because there was no teeth to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
because a bear would naturally just pull with teeth and pull it back, keep
Right.
pulling. It doesn't grab, hold, and just go. It's got paws. But this, he said, it looked like fingers and knuckles that just reached around this corner, where the corners meet, and just grabbed it and just started walking off.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he actually shot in the direction of, he thought the thing, he'd think he missed it, but it dropped him, and it stopped it stopped, and it just bolted off.
Yeah.
But he swears he saw the thing earlier that day, kind of across. It was in a meadow, I think it was. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and read it, but a meadow, and he was up hunting. It's like, I don't know, 8 or 9 paragraphs he sent me of the experience. But it was pretty interesting. And he swears he saw it earlier. It was just kind of shadowing him from tree to tree to tree. And he thought it could have possibly been a bear or something like that. But
No.
it looked like it was walking or whatever. And he figured, okay, maybe it's another hunter. Maybe the hunter's going to leave, whatever. But he says that wasn't the case. And he wasn't afraid to shoot at it that night because it was dragging him off in his tent. And I was like, gosh, dude. I was like, were you on Sasquatch Chronicles once? He's like, no. He's all, I'm not doing any interviews. I'm like, whatever. I was like, but that's kind of cool, but crazy and scary.
Yeah, at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you had another story on your website. I think it was a woman who was in her tent on a river.
Yeah, the young lady. Yeah, from she was down around Shasta area. That one was absolutely awesome. I got that one firsthand, and that was a pretty freaky encounter. I was, personally speaking, I think that more often than not, we pass by these things in the forest constantly.
Agreed.
I don't think that they are real malevolent in any ways towards us, like they hate human beings and they want to eat us. I think it's just like a mountain gorilla of some kind, that just wants to be left alone. But because we encroach, we end up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes.
And so, that can be, or we can end up in the right place at the right time, watching it walk off or watching it feed or, whatever from a distance. I mean,
that's what fine. I would prefer.
Yeah. But, once in a while, we encroach, and the next thing you know, we're sitting around where maybe a rogue male is passing through hunting, and
Yes.
You're in the way.
Well, you had a story about somebody who, I guess they were living in the backcountry outside of off of Mount Ashland.
That was a goat man. I know goat man. Goat man told me that story.
Oh, with his girlfriend who passed away.
Yeah. I knew his girlfriend too. She's a sweetheart.
Oh,
I knew.
I listened to that twice. I couldn't believe that story.
Yeah, that was goat man. Tell you the truth, I had a little hard time kind of believing it myself, but it was goat man. I like goat man. I come from Ashland, Oregon. It's a very liberal town. I'm a very conservative feller. But that's okay, to each his own, whatever. But at the same time, it's like when he told me that, it wasn't one of his typical, goat man's going to talk to me about, some ridiculous stuff about his growing weed or something. But he just got so intense sitting there in that little McDonald's on the other side of town when he was telling me this. He told me this, and I was, what was I? I was about. First time he mentioned it, I was a teen, and the last time he talked to me about that, I'd seen him one more time. I must have been in my late 20s, and he was just so intense about the whole thing that I just had this funny feeling that this was true, that it really happened to him. You can never be sure, I can't be sure about yours. I can't be sure about goat man's, and nobody can be sure about mine because you weren't there. But what we can do is we can tell you what happened, and we can give you that experience and that's it. But you can sometimes tell somebody when they're pretty animate. Half the stuff I hear on places like Sasquatch Chronicles, I'm just like, wow, that's a little too really weird. But then the other half is like you hear something that's just like, wow, that was just so compelling.
Yeah, that was
You know?
Goatman's story. And I'll tell you, when he turned back and saw that thing run across the meadow at him, and then I think he said it got down on all fours
Yeah.
and charged him, that would have been just horrific. Right?
I
mean, I
what
believe
do you
him.
do? You just lay down and die, I suppose.
Well, did he have any type of spray or wasp spray or bear spray?
I don't think not back then, because when that
Okay.
happened, I think that so yeah, man, they might have had mosquito spray back
I don't know. I
then.
think he said he rolled and the thing missed him and then he ran up the last hill and then
I
down
think it
into his
stopped.
encampment.
I think what it did is it did a bluff charge, more like a bluff charge. Like, you
Oh,
better get going, you better get out of here, or I'm going to
yeah.
tear you apart. As far as I'm concerned, I think it was more of a bluff charge, where
Okay.
it came to a certain point within, just yards, and it stopped. And if you ever notice on bluff charges, if it wasn't for that, then we'd have dead people from Bigfoot.
Right.
Many, many more than what we believe there is. Um, the bluff charge is something that says that's the last straw. This is it.
Yeah.
The next time I charge, I'm going all the way through. It's just happening. And so it's kind of that last straw. Great apes do it. They do a bluff charge. They go and start rolling at you, and all of a sudden, boom, they come to a mass, just this halt.
Wow.
So, I think that's what was happening there. But Goat Man, he was an awesome guy. He was just, he was a little out there for a hippie. I mean, hippies. But at the same time, it's just his face during this whole thing was just, it didn't change. And I remember the second time I heard the story, nothing changed about it. Nothing. Not a shred of it.
Is he still with us?
No,
Oh, I'm
no, Goat
sorry.
Man's gone.
We'd love to
Yeah,
hear the story
he was even
firsthand.
older then when I met him. So
Yeah, yeah. But
it
that
was
is
either
a
that or all the hard years of
yeah,
weed and
hard
liquor,
living. Yeah, yeah. Well, that was an
moonshine
amazing
and weed.
story. Hmm.
But yeah, some of the stories I get are pretty awesome. Some of the basic encounters are pretty awesome too. I mean, they're pretty incredible. But I guess anything in this particular conversation is pretty incredible.
It
You
is.
know.
It's just with like being dragged in your tent, what Goatman went through, and some of the other stories. Those are truly terrifying.
Yeah, the one I got from the family member of the husband and wife in the cabin, I put that one up there today.
Oh, I read that.
It's kind of secondhandish, but hey, you know what? I liked it. I did have to create the backstory to that one pretty good, but what happened was pretty intense, and it wasn't that long ago, really. If you think about it, it was like 9 years ago or something,
Hmm.
8, 9 years, 10 years ago, whatever. So it was a pretty recent one up around Berry Glen,
Yes.
California. So
Wow.
that was pretty cool. I
Good.
liked that one. I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Well, they were smart. They did the diversion.
Well, he was what I do know is that he is a military guy. He did serve in Vietnam. He actually did I think like 2 tours through there or something like that. And he was actually walking the jungles, so he
Wow.
is pretty much lucky to be even come out of there.
Yeah.
But from what I understood, what his family members said was that he had a lot of military experience. So he had kind of a military background, and then went into working with the some power company or something like that in California, doing power lines.
Hmm.
So, and then he would work on those. Those big power lines was the kinds that run through the middle of the forest. And they had those
Yes.
big white. Yeah, it's those. They go all the way
Hmm.
through right down the middle of California.
Hmm.
So he's up in these mountain ranges and stuff, working on these things here and there, and he would just camp. And he said he never ever experienced anything except for once he experienced some stuff when he was working just south of the central part of California. But it was he said there was some, I guess, illegal immigrants or something that had happened at one of the camps there, and they had some
Right.
incidences. And he says the only problem I ever had up until that point up in the mountains of California was from people until that moment, that time. And that's what his family member said. It was like, then all of a sudden it was just life changed. you know.
Oh yeah, and speaking of life changing, his wife.
Hmm.
I mean, she was looking out the window doing the dishes, and there's this thing staring
Just
at her,
I mean,
breathing.
you
Yeah,
know, I mean, could you imagine that when you're in the middle of the forest, you're in a cabin, and all of a sudden you're just breathing outside the window?
I mean, it sounds like a buffalo. I've
Yeah, and the
never
one
been
thing
near
I
one.
didn't write in there though is that if you sat there and you think about the cabin, a cabin like that, it kind of has to set up off, you know, when they remodel it, you kind of set it up off the forest floor because it'd be really damp. So you're trying to get some good concrete in there or whatever, but you're trying to get it up off there. So you want, you know, those windows got to be at least 6, 7 feet up off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about something that's breathing in through the window. Means a
Yeah.
mouth is somewhere right around. My mouth wouldn't be around there. I'm thinking to myself, so that thing's got to be at least 7 feet, 7.5 feet tall, period, to be
Yes.
breathing in through that window.
Right.
So I was like, that was the freakiest part of that
Oh
encounter
yeah.
story I heard. I was like, oh my gosh. So, but I like my stuff to be kind of entertaining and stuff. So, you know, I'm trying to be more of the entertainment side of things here because everybody gets so serious sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's all research all day, and sometimes you just need to lighten up with a good campfire tale.
There you go. Well, you do a
So,
great job.
thanks, man. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That was great. So, you guys out there in PacWest Bigfoot land, pinpoint that place on your map. So, if you guys want to, you can start kind of doing that when we do these interviews. Pinpoint where these locations are and do your own research out there. Check out the scenery, what it looks like. Go to Google Maps, check it out. So, good stuff. So, awesome. Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure. Thank
That
you.
was
If you ever
great,
come
man.
down to the east side, give me a shout.
I will. I will. I will. I got kids though, so I never really go too far. Except for this week, I'll be going camping.
Oh, cool. Cool.
So yeah, so that'll be kind of fun. Awesome. All righty, sir. Well, thank you very much. Hold on one second while I kind of close this out for everybody else. Thank you guys very much for listening in. Don't forget, I'm going to be on. This is June 23rd. So for the next week, I'm going to be on vacation. So I won't be around to answer any of the emails or anything from you guys. But if you want to, don't forget PacWestBigfoot.com, PacWestBigfoot.com. You guys can jump on there, subscribe to the clan. You get the free newsletter, and you get a chance to win some awesome gifts. And this next month is the A Young Researcher's Guide to Bigfoot by Gail Beatty and Deborah Ray. So you guys can check that out. I love that stuff. And I'm going to throw a nice little Sasquatch coffee sticker in it for you. Okay? Sound awesome? Not to mention, I'm going to give away a second gift next month, freebie, of a PacWest Bigfoot t-shirt. Cool. All right. With that, God bless, guys. Hold on a second, Bill.